Hello, my name is Taylor Brown, and the title of my research is The Influence of Mood on Language. When I was thinking about my research, I wanted to look at mood for a variety of reasons. We notice in our everyday life the ways in which our mood impacts our feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and research has supported this idea that mood can shape how we make sense of the world and how we view interpersonal interactions. Also, mood and language in particular are aspects of every culture in one form or another. So this made me especially interested in analyzing the relationship between these two. Social interactions aren't always so straightforward. Maybe we don't always know what someone is actually saying to us or what they mean by something that they said. So research has found that when scenarios like this aren't so obvious, our mood really does play a role in how we end up interpreting a situation. So part of my research is modeled after Matovich and his colleagues' work, in which they found that people in a negative mood were better able to tell whether a scenario was ambiguous or unambiguous. And they found this to be a result of longer process times that were present of participants in a negative mood. When we're happy, our cognitive capacity is consumed with all of these positive connections that are being activated all at the same time. So we can't process things concretely, and we're more likely to observe situations from a global big picture perspective and rely on heuristics, which are like mental shortcuts. When we're in a negative mood, though, we're able to process information more systematically and pay attention to the concrete details of a situation. And this last piece of literature here is what the second part of my research is modeled after, which was where Buchboom and Semen found that concrete words like verbs were more likely to be used by people in a negative mood, and abstract words like adjectives were more likely to be used by people in a positive mood. So based on the findings here of Buchboom and Semen and Matovich and his colleagues, I hypothesized that when presented with ambiguous scenarios, individuals induced in a negative mood will correctly identify the scenario as ambiguous and unclear, and individuals induced in a positive mood will incorrectly say that the scenario was unambiguous, that it was clear and straightforward. My second hypothesis was that those in a negative mood will be more likely to explain the situation using concrete words, and individuals in a positive mood will use abstract words. So for my research, I had 97 participants, and 59 of them ended up being in the negative mood and 38 in the positive mood. And my participants received their materials, which was a Qualtrics survey, through their email. So the participants were randomly grouped into a mood condition, and then mood was induced using movie clips from The Jungle Book and Sophie's Choice, which were the same ones that were used in Buchboom and Semen's research. And this was followed by a question that asked them to just assess their mood level at that moment. And then all participants were given the same 3 ambiguous scenarios that were then each followed by the same 2 questions. And these 2 questions asked them first to determine how clear the scenario was, and then to choose words to represent the entire scenario. And for that second question, they were given 4 options, 2 of which were concrete words, and the other 2 were abstract words. So I used an independent t-test to analyze the results between the negative and positive mood groups. And I found that the movie clips did manipulate mood appropriately, and you can see here P is less than 0.001. However, my first hypothesis was not supported because there were no statistically significant differences in ambiguity assessment between the negative and positive mood group. And so what you're seeing in this table here is the average ratings of sentence ambiguity for all 3 of the scenarios between negative and positive mood group. And essentially, the survey was organized in a way that a lower score indicates a correct identification of the ambiguous scenario. So as expected, the negative mood group had a lower and therefore more correct answer average than the positive mood group. In addition to that, there were no significant differences between mood groups for the questions on word choice, and therefore my second hypothesis was also not supported. And this table here shows the average type of word choice between the mood groups, with a lower score indicating concrete word choice and a higher score indicating abstract word choice. One noteworthy finding was that the mean values for the majority of the individual questions on my survey were the opposite to what I expected, meaning the ambiguity questions, for those questions, the positive mood group was actually more likely to answer correctly and the negative group incorrectly. And then for the word choice questions, the positive group was actually answering more concrete words, and the negative mood group was using more abstract words. So the differences here weren't statistically significant, and so they shouldn't be heavily considered at all, but I still found them to be pretty fascinating that not only were my hypotheses not supported, but the descriptives I found actually showed the opposite relationship than what I had predicted. So unfortunately, I did have to conclude that mood did not statistically influence identification of ambiguous scenarios, nor did it affect word choice. And my results don't align with those of the research I was basing my own study off of. But my research was limited in the fact that I didn't include a writing section to my survey. And much of the research on mood and word choice in particular does include some aspect of a free writing from the participants. So I think including this could be beneficial to my study in the fact that I could maybe get more accurate results from the participants and also better be able to relate my study to past research. Potential explanations for not seeing the findings I expected could be that my participants were a little overwhelmed with student research and therefore they weren't able to really take their time on my survey. And also that my choice of ambiguous scenarios might not have been as careful or as effective as I anticipated. And so future research could focus more on the selection of scenarios. Another possible explanation could be that a lot of the literature that this study was based on is quite old, a few decades old even, and maybe the relationship between mood and linguistics is evolving. And my research doesn't particularly support that idea, but I think that future research should potentially be open to this possibility. And lastly, the opposite averages that I mentioned earlier, I think could potentially be explained by an unaccounted for variable that was maybe influencing the findings. For example, since the sample included individuals from a college campus, maybe like major area of studies, such as like English or biology, could also be a factor aside from mood that impacts participants' language. And lastly, I just want to thank my participants in this research and my mentor for helping me through this process.